Keegan is there hacking away in the front row, desperately trying to get the P2P demos to work, and just did a little whatever that emoticon is. So I'm sure that means that the demos are going to work amazingly. It's also meant to be Amandine here going in and saying hello, but we got an invite a couple of hours ago to try to persuade the British government to use Matrix. And so she's currently in Westminster trying to persuade a whole bunch of important people that they should use Matrix. I guess we'll find out from her when she turns up how well that went. Keegan is France using Matrix, there's bits of Germany using Matrix, and in the UK it's been a little bit more of a muted enthusiasm, but we'll see how well she's got on with that. Before I kick off, any questions? This is your opportunity to stop me just talking whatever crap is in my head for the next 45 minutes.
That's what we came for.
Be careful what you wish for.
So Matrix, I mean, is there any point in going through this is what Matrix is stuff? So basically, long story short, Dendrite is small and lightweight, and to the extent that we're running it client-side, which will be all the peer-to-peer stuff we'll have after the break. And the idea is for an IoT-style use case, Dendrite should be incredibly tiny light, floaty light, as the expression goes. I mean, the demo we did 4 years ago, I think, at FOSDEM, possibly 5 years now. It was the first time we went to FOSDEM, was that we took Amandine's car, which is a Volkswagen Passat, and took an ODB2 adapter, which is the onboard diagnostic port. And every car has this. It's a horrible thing. It looks a bit like a SCART connector. And every car has a completely incompatible, fragmented bunch of random binary that it throws out over the telemetry port. And we just sucked the whole thing in, put it into JSON, put it in real time into Matrix. And she was in France, we were in Brussels, and we subscribed to it, although there was a little bit of smoke and mirrors involved, live on stage to look at what the RPM was, or whatever it was that the engine was shoving out. And in practice, it was only like a packet, like 2-3 packets a second. So for one car, on one server, it was fine. But it's probably not going to scale up to Uber or some other fleet of millions of vehicles. But it could do. And it's only going to happen if somebody tries to build that and then complains bitterly that Synapse can't keep up. And we'll route them to Dendrite, which will work amazingly. And before you know it, all of the data of every vehicle in the world will be in Matrix. What am I talking about? Any other questions on slide 1 of 482? At the risk of jumping ahead to what comes next is very much going to be fixing communities as well as making the user experience in Riot really as good as possible. Neil, am I allowed to talk about what we're doing logistically with user experience in Riot? I got 2 thumbs up from Neil. So I've got some interesting news, which is that I guess is it a year and a half ago that Nad joined, or 2 years now possibly? Basically, after we set up New Vector, one of the first things we did was to try to find somebody who would be crazy enough to work full-time on design on Riot and go and try to improve the user experience so that there was a flagship app that people could use that didn't suck. And let's face it, historically the UX on Riot really sucked. Nad's come on over the last year and a half and has been chipping away massively at getting the new design implemented and polishing all sorts of bits, doing all of the new end-to-end encryption work. He's designed all of the community stuff that we haven't implemented yet and has been transformative in getting Riot to where it is today. So we're not quite up at Slack or Discord levels, but we're on the right trajectory for it. What we've been doing since we raised some money as New Vector, the company who go and hire a lot of the Matrix core team in October, has been looking for people to join NAD to go and really have more people working on UI and UX on Riot. And whilst I don't think we have signed confirmation, verbally we've got 2 new designers working alongside NAD as of yesterday, or possibly this morning. Which could be exciting in terms of literally tripling the number of professional designers who are working on Riot and making it not suck. And they're really good and have a lot of experience, but one of them particularly has a lot of experience in this domain already. So watch this space for basically the impact that has, hopefully. Why am I talking about design? Communities. And first-time user experience is coming up next, and the fact that we will, there are a lot of people developing on Matrix now. There are think New Vector developer-wise, we're at like 40 people working on the entire ecosystem, going from Riot Mobile to Riot Web to Synapse to Dendrite to peer-to-peer stuff to bridging to Modular, the hosting platform that New Vector provides, which you should buy a server on right now. And to have like 40 developers and one designer is nuts. 3 designers, 40 developers, starting to sound slightly more sane. And it will be fascinating to see how we basically have to get everybody to jump on implementing the new user experience and trying to make Riot as good as possible. So, and our metric for success, by the way, is that it needs to be something that you recommend to your non-techie friends. We have a code name for this, which I probably won't explain, but suffice it to say that we are on a mission to try to make sure that Riot is something you recommend to your parents, your friends, your non-techie mate, the people who know that there's something a bit worrying about using Facebook Messenger and WhatsApp for everything and want to do the right thing. They've heard something about Signal, but they tried to use it and it's completely crippled in functionality because it prioritizes privacy over everything else. And if only there was something that was as usable as Slack or WhatsApp, but actually was self-sovereign and that you control your own data, and they use it, and they discover that it's matrix and right, and it doesn't suck, that's where we want to be. Ecosystem-wise, what's new here? We need to update the community side of this because there are all sorts of interesting new clients and indeed servers coming around. We'll talk about some more of them later. Probably a really fun thing is Thunderbird, which isn't shown here, went and publicly committed to FOSDEM that they're going to get Matrix in as a first-class citizen. So we're looking forward to working with them on it.
Are the mobile apps? New mobile projects?
Yes, yeah, we're missing all of the next generation of mobile apps. So we've got Ditto Chat written, or I guess led by Annie, which is written in React Native, which is really sexy. If you're on a platform that supports React Native, all of them, go and have a play with it now. It's got better UX in some ways than Riot in terms of being a simpler messenger-based app. You've got Neo, not to be confused with NoIO Python library or Keanu Reeves, which is the Swift UI-based app that Killian has been working on. We've also got Messagery, which is another Swift UI app that Manu on the Riot iOS and Riot Mobile team in France has been working on. And we've got Paddle in Flutter. And there's another Flutter... Fluffy Chat, which is Fluffy Chat got reborn in Flutter.
It's now Flutter and Ubuntu Touch.
Oh, so it's 2 separate code bases. Okay, so we've got one which is operating in Flutter, which I really hope they're called Fluffy Chat, otherwise they're just missing a trick. And separately, the original Ubuntu port QML-based thing from memory. Basically, there are a lot more clients which we should put up here, which is not to say that the others here are not also progressing. Seaglass is a little bit stranded at the moment, probably overtaken by the Swift UI apps. WeChat Matrix has gone from strength to strength. GoMux had a bit of a dip, but was getting PRs last week to get SSO support for Mozilla. Quaternion, we're already seeing GSOC people wanting to work on Quaternion. Fractal is hopefully going to have a huge boost in the near future because we've started doing an official Rust SDK, which we'll talk about a bit later, based out of Pantaliman, the daemon which does your end-to-end, which we're porting to Rust, and then pulling or extracting a Rust SDK out of Neko is also in active dev, and yeah, we just need to get more. We need to expand the right-hand side. Sorry, there's a question from someone. Yes?
Is Realm like an alternative to Postgres?
So Realm is a client-side database, and it originally, well, this guy originally was just using flat files in Java for storage on the client, and obviously that's not going to scale in any sensible way at all. I think bits of this got switched out for Realm, and Realm is nice because it's an object database, it's quite high level, and it also has lots of weird network side stuff if you want to do a Firebase style replicated object thing, a bit like Matrix. Certainly a few years ago, it was the cool thing to use. In practice, I think it might have suffered a little bit from chasing the new shiny, and we're looking at going back to a simpler database like SQLite possibly, which actually worked really well in like years ago, and if any pro don't fix it.
Yeah, oh wow, just literally come out of my mind. No, yeah. Media files, sharing pictures and stuff. A lot of us share a lot of pictures, and sometimes we end up sharing them multiple times.
Mm-hmm.
That I believe is called a media store. Can you talk a bit more about that and what's happening there? I mean,
yeah, sure. So the question is, what happens when you share media in Matrix? So yeah, you're right that it gets stored in the media repository, which is a component of Synapse down here, or indeed Dendrite. There is also in the other services box over here, a third-party implementation done by Travis, which is confusingly called Matrix Media Repo, which is a Go implementation different to the Go one that Dendrite has, or the Python one in Synapse. And it's really stupid and simple. You know, it's just a blunt file replication thing where you go and put a big blob of binary data to your server, and it then goes and puts it to any other server that doesn't even put it. It holds it until another server's user requests it, and then the other server will get it, suck it into that server, and then get it down to the client. So it's kind of like Matrix, but without any subtlety at all. It's just, here's a bundle of bits, please replicate it around the place. The only sexy thing it does is the thumbnail for you. So you can either ask for the actual data or a thumbnail of it, and it has a very, very simple API to say, hey, can I get it at this width and height, this aspect ratio, ideally, can you crop it, ideally, and the server does the best bet to go and try to reduce it to the right size. And that's basically all it does. The good news is that Travis's media repository, I think, is very performant, and it deduplicates content, whereas previously every single stupid meme GIF, Keegan, ended up being replicated multiple times on the server, and so literally ended up, I think, with 26 gigabytes of GIFs that Keegan uploaded over the years out of his 3 gigabyte GIF collection. Whereas Travis's repo goes and factors it out. It also provides v-hosting so that you can share one repo between lots of other random ones, which is particularly useful for his use case because he runs t2bot.io, which hosts lots of different bridges for different places. And again, you really want to factor out that content for the different home servers and services. Cool. Other community status, if you might select distinct MXID on matrix.org, you get 14.7 now. Other stats are relatively similar to where they were a month ago, and many because I couldn't be bothered to recalculate them. On end-to-end stuff, I could go over all of the E2E stuff. Perhaps I'll just get to the demo because I'm feeling guilty. Let's see where things are at on the demo. So, in fact, I'll try to do a different, that's cross-signing internal. CI was faster, should be done after a refresh. How could this possibly go wrong? So, let me go and see if I can, am I mirrored? I'm mirrored. So here's my S6, and I've literally just gone and put a brand new Riot X on it. And this is logged into Arisphere, my personal server, on my phone here. Let me expand it a bit so that people can better see what's going on. And I've got a DM through to with me as Matthew on matrix.org, so I can say hello. And apparently I'm called Alistair for a change. And here is Alice, where of course my hi message is not yet sent. Come on, Matrix, or Arisphere, I guess in this instance. Arisphere sits on home DSL, so it's probably not the wisest choice for demoing on this. In fact, I did it for the FOSDEM demos of it and realized afterwards, if Virgin Media went down right now, that would be really bad. So let me see if I can get this thing into actually having connectivity. Come on, Android, you can do it. It could just be this phone is almost unusable. Seriously? Obviously would be the perfect one. Perhaps I should just shell into my server at home, trying to find out what's going on with it. Right, so here is Riot X's login sequence. This should be a relatively small account, so it should log in quite quickly. There we go. Right, when Matthew stands in front of light, sometimes it is better. Sorry if I'm silhouetted, everybody. I imagine that this massive screen is going and blanking me out. But honestly, you don't want to see me anyway. It's all about the screen. Oh, we've got the new sign-in stuff there. Let me not try to complete that. Let me go and DM this Matthew, which is Matthew test 7 on matrix.org. There I am with a beautiful retro avatar from the dim and early days. You can see one of my fascinating DMs there. So that's a good start. I've got the UIC in that room. Let me try it again. I want to verify you. Start verification. Oh, there it is. Oh, except you can't see the phone. There we go. So here's the new verification UI in RightX, which is happening now within a DM, actually in the timeline. We're going to accept it. And it gives me the option of scanning the code. And critically, this is a new QR code. This is entirely brand new, never seen before, mainly because Travis merged it 25 minutes ago, which is a binary QR code, which is a lot simpler than the horrible things we tried to demo and failed to demo at Folston. This time it's going to work though, obviously. So we're going to hit scan the code button, and hopefully, not secure. So that might be because the new version of Riot is available in the background, and I did the one thing I needed to do was actually to refresh in order to pick up the good work that Travis has been doing to fix. So the problem there is that the prefix is wrong on the QR code. For whatever reason, we've prefixed them with matrix and capital letters, kind of as a magic number, so that if somebody else scans this, it doesn't teleport them into some totally different app and universe. The problem is that that one had a numeric prefix of 5 before the matrix to tell you that a matrix is 5 letters long, which is not what Android was expecting, and that is a PR that Travis just merged. And we will have to wait for my account, which is quite large, to sync up. And now, if we try to do the same thing again, having fixed it, it's obviously going to work. So let's start a verification again from here, once my E2E is loaded. By the way, Ryan, this is the bug when you don't get your E2E history after a refresh, in case it's hard to reproduce. Come on. No, it's good enough. So let's try to re-verify this guy. Start verification. Verification request. I think my account is still warming up. Yeah, history's come in now. It's now trying to send the message. This is where matrix.org also falls over for dramatic effect.
Have you considered using modular for other accounts?
I probably should. Modular is great, but I guess for sentimental value and also wanting to dog food the thing that so many other people are having pain on, I still use matrix.org personally, because if matrix.org can't scale, then we've got problems, and it's good to be very painfully aware of that. So we've sent the verification request. Hopefully it might even come through to, here it is. Let's see whether Travis's PR works. No! Okay, well, it's meant to work, and who knows? I probably got the wrong branch on Android. I think I got developed, in theory it should work in terms of getting the new QR format. But basically, it's one of the things we've changed since FOSDEM, that the QR codes have the public keys that you're trying to verify in them, and they were just being done as text, and it was massive, so we've gone and squanched it all the way down to binary now. Looks a lot smaller, a lot simpler. Real pain in the ass to get right. Turns out that most QR libraries don't support binary, and the default Google one doesn't, so you have to use the third-party one on Android. You also have to use the third-party one on iOS, and so we've wasted quite a lot of time desperately trying to make these things work, and as you can see, we still haven't quite got the format right. But it's very nearly there. Let's go and try to show it off anyway. So Dave, what account should I be using you on? Ah, that one there. Perfect. Okay. Good. Yeah, not the one that was bolded there. I don't sure I know what that is. Hi, Dave. So Dave is on a new test account here, and he's black. And if we go and flip forward 20 odd slides in what I was trying to talk about earlier, then they've gone and put these shields everywhere. I tried to clarify what these are. At first, we got it totally wrong, so I'm hoping that this is clearer. The green means everything is good. Green is good, people. And it means users and devices are verified. Red is bad. Red means that you verified somebody, but they've got an unverified device. Disaster. This happens if they have installed some random client which doesn't do cross-signing and is not trusted but basically could be an attacker or a malicious server administrator who's gone and nicks your access tokens from somewhere. And then finally, black is everything else. It's a mixture of unknown, it's basically if you have some unknown devices which you haven't verified in there, but everybody else there is trusted, then it'll end up being black. So at the moment, Dave is in the black. If I go and ask him to verify, you have the right level CSS animation, we hit the start verification button, and we get a verification happening in DM. And it should be smart enough to not negotiate emoji because it's on the web. I'm also on the web. So sorry, not negotiate QR, it will negotiate emoji. I can say verified by emoji. It doesn't waste time trying to show QR codes. Instead, we will do our typical traditional thing of saying, hey Dave, key cloud flag ball moonfish mushroom.
Yeah, black ball moonfish mushroom.
Amazing, they match. Hopefully Dave will verify. Also, at the moment we have to enter the secret storage passphrase, but Zoe, if you're out there, we're about to be persisting that, so we don't need to enter it every time. I think there's PR or something for that, or something coming real soon now. Let me go and grab the right passphrase. No thanks. And hey presto, Dave is now green, but he has but one verified device in the room, which is him sitting on Chrome on Mac OS. I know nobody from Mozilla is watching. And so the fun thing about this is, good job, I'm not using Chrome. The other thing, I guess, is that if he now logs in on another device, the whole point of cross-signing is that I should magically trust him already. So we might just have to trust that Dave is now going to log in on another device, which I assume is going to be an incognito window or something.
Yeah.
You could do it in Firefox. Just saying. Just saying. And in theory, this should update in real time to show the new device coming in, I think. Although in practice, member info isn't updating in real time quite. Oh, it is. That's called
I don't know what you're talking
anti-jinx.
about. It works fine.
This is in no way a Heisenberg where sometimes the member info. Oh, have you even got two of them?
Yeah.
That's what you wanted, right?
Yes, precisely. So I'm hoping that if Dave now cross-signs himself, and there's a cross-signing flow in there, it will be the pop-up in the top left that says, hello, I want to go and verify my new login, and he will go and emoji verify himself. You might have to trust him at this point. Oh, we have another question.
You mentioned federation. Is it like ActivityPub federation? Or?
No. So Matrix Federation is its own thing. So ActivityPub post-dates Matrix effectively. The color kicks off 2015, 16. I know, it works. Amazing. So real-time updates of Dave now being verified. How cool is that? But cross-signing does almost work. So it's so close, it's untrue. Bear with us, of course, we iron out the remaining kinks. But yeah, Matrix Federation is the same thing. It's like HTTP-based federation going and putting objects to your local server. It puts them to other ones with its own API. ActivityPub's a bit of a weird mix of many different tech which have been glued together, whether it's RSS or Salmon or Webfinger or WebHub, PubSub, blah thing. And it's good for Mastodon and kind of Twitter-style microblogging use cases, but it's not like a real-time chat system like we have here in Matrix. Either way, yay, cross-signing actually working, and Dave has gone green, and it all updated in real time. Cool, I tell you that almost worked.
So just to make sure I get this right, so that means that if you are a good citizen and you cross-check your own devices, everybody else benefits from it, and
Yep.
they will not have to check you more than once.
Yeah, so this is the key upshot of this is that having verified Dave once, that's it for life, hopefully, unless he gets monumentally owned and all of his devices get thrown away. He can, every time he adds a new device, go and verify himself, and I'll just trust him forever. So it's the holy grail of cross-signed device verification. Cool. Any other questions about the E2E work? Basically, one more.
Is it finished?
Very nearly, that was going to be my final thing. But we were aiming to get it done for February. We're running out of February, quite alarmingly. It's tantalizingly close. The things which have held us back are changing the QR format, also changing what we call SSSS or QuadS, which is the server-side storage function, the place where you go and encrypt all of your information, like your key backups and who you verified, etc. Where we screwed up the encryption and realized it was vulnerable to an attack where the server admin could switch the backup out from under you because we weren't signing it appropriately. So we've just redesigned that to no longer use asymmetric encryption for the triplet quad S storage, but instead use symmetric crypto to mitigate that attack, which means re-implementing it everywhere. So that's also slowed us down. We also had a federation bug that had to be fixed, and there's lots of little UI polish, like stopping the login button being double-clicked in other edge cases. But once that's there, and obviously actually making the QR code scan reliably between web and Android, but once it's there, it should be pretty good. Shall we go and have a beer or something?
There's beer.
Amandy, over to you.
Thank you, Matthew. Just because I missed the first part of it, so I'm going to intro Brandon because he's, as you can see, he's ready to talk, sitting comfortably, watching as everyone else. But where's the camera? Ah, so I need to stand in front of it. Yes, hi. And yeah, I think Matthew said why I was away before, just to give a quick overview of the kind of things which are happening with Matrix outside of let's build super cool clients and let's have integrations to thousands of different apps, and let's try to build home servers in all the as many languages as possible, and this kind of things. There are actually like real life deployments happening out there with millions of users outside the Matrix.org server. And so I think most of the people have heard about the French government actually deploying it across the board, having each ministry really applying their own security levels to each deployment, and yet still be able to communicate because this is Matrix. And having Matrix actually powering the G7 summit security in Biarritz in September or something. So all the secret services, police, etc., they were all coordinating over Matrix to actually ensure security around all the presidents down there. And also we spent some time in Texas last month speaking to emergency management, because what is the main problem with emergency management when something really bad happens is that you have the firemen, you have the police, you have ambulances, you have emergency management itself, public safety itself, and no one can talk to one another, and their biggest problem is interrupt. So that's the kind of thing that outside of the really cool technical side of things that Matrix is bringing, is actually solving real life problems basically, and helping real life use cases to actually be unfolded. So just a quick overview of what's happening on the other side of the world and in the new vector world, where we're trying to help grow from very, very concrete use cases.
So wait, did we sign the UK government?
No, we're still trying to.
Apparently
UK government is slightly distracted, but we're not giving up. We're knocking at every door, and even always the same door sometimes from different angles. But we have more and more contacts, and we will get there, because they're still like, well, we're using WhatsApp to coordinate. Oh, come on, guys. Or we're using Slack, and that's fine. No, it isn't. So, yeah, it's still not signed in the UK, but other countries are coming up to speed, so let's see where this goes. And industry is also coming up to speed outside of big governments. There are also big industry players. So, yeah, more information when times comes. On the plus side, yay, Mozilla got it, and heard the power of open source, and the how actually it's useful to be able to talk to your community.
We have a message, by the way, from Mozilla, who say, "Totes weird seeing you on a live stream. Tell the room Mozilla says hi," which they sent about half an hour ago, which was presumably when we were doing funnies about the browser being used. So Mozilla says hi to the room.
Mozilla says hi to everyone, and Mozilla is happy. So yay! Thank you.
Okay, everybody, it's stuck with me to wrap it up, and also Keegan. So this is Keegan, everybody. Keegan is one of the original founding dev team of Matrix back in the bad old days of 2013 and 14, when we thought it was a good idea to create Matrix, and worked on many things, but Dendrite, in the beginning of Dendrite to some extent, did you do the sync server or?
Some of it.
Yeah, okay.
Well, Git blame, right?
So yeah, basically git blame, we'll look at the contributor profile on Dendrite, and you'll see that there are a couple of people back in about 2017 with lots and lots of commits. Then there is a little bit of a hiatus from some of them, and I won't talk about that, but more recently, in the last month or so, Keegan's come back to the fold and is hacking away on Dendrite again, albeit under entirely different pretenses and for entirely different reasons. I'm wondering how we can structure this in the kind of 10-ish minutes that we have to play with. Yeah, perhaps that's the way to do this might be to just give a little bit of context about P2P, and then we can actually talk about specifically the P2P work, what has been going on. Get the right place.
Your contacts in Warsaw.
So this is the same slides that if the HDMI hadn't been destroyed by Half-Shot.
Do you need the mic for the people on the camera?
Oh yeah, that's a
On
good
the
point.
live stream?
Sorry, I don't think we do. It's not hooked up to the camera. You can hear me anyway. But this will make me a bit louder and a bit more likely for the thing to come through. If you're not totally sick of QR codes and you want to risk running completely random Docker stuff on your laptop off the internet, which probably won't work, then there is some demo instructions you could try to play along with. It's not the new demo, the one that Keegan has been desperately hacking on in the corner, but we might do it anyway, depending on how much time we have to play with. But quickly, why P2P? The whole point here is to give users, in fact this is horribly distorting, let me try the other mic. Is that less distorted? Yeah, it's a bit. P2P is all about trying to give users more autonomy without having to be a system to run their own server. Critically easier onboarding, you don't need to pick an instance, you're just part of the hive from the outset. And the idea of making Matrix more P2P-able is that by default you can just start off P2P. You install Riot, and you've got a home server running in Riot, and you have total control over all of your comms. If you want a home, then you can go and find a home, somewhere to pin your messages on the internet, on the server, forever, and you can have multiple ones, potentially, to share between different servers, but in the end, you don't have to do that. It allows you to do internetless operation. It protects your metadata, so there isn't a server necessarily which is accumulating all of the information about who spoke to who when. Instead, it's just on the handsets which have spoken to one another. It could also help us with client-side bridging, that if you run iMessage or WhatsApp or something where they really don't want you to run the bridge server-side, if you're running it client-side on your own phone, then that seems a little bit more reasonable. And also makes us, it really raises the bar for Matrix, because if we can go and support a home server running on every client, and it forces us to improve the routing algorithms, it forces us to have better transport. It means we have to shrink our home servers from being gigabyte-sized Python things like Synapse down to relatively dinky little Go things like Dendrite. It also forces us to have multi-homed account, because if you have an iPad and a laptop and a phone, and you want your conversation history and your account to exist on each one, that's forced us to do account portability. So these are all reasons why we've been playing with P2P pretty seriously. And the coolest thing is that it doesn't change the clients or the bots or the bridges at all. So you can have Riot as it exists entirely today, and it just goes and talks to a server that happens to be running on your phone or in your browser, rather than sitting on DigitalOcean or AWS or UpCloud or wherever. Make sense? Any questions about what we're doing P2P? Cool. We could go back in history and expatiate on this.
Proxy instead of as a known server address, and have your phone to be the server, but with a proxy that can also store messages for you, for example.
Yes, but at that point it might as well just be a server. If you're running a server of some type on your phone, I mean, it might as well be the real deal. In fact, we kind of flip it the other way around, that you do need some kind of thing in the network to store and forward your messages if the person you're talking to is down, if everything was peer-to-peer. And honestly, we still haven't quite had an argument over how to do that yet. So rather than having a thin proxy on the client and then a chunkier thing on the network, we've literally flipped it around to be a simple store and forward thing on the network, and then a home server, a full home server on the client at the moment. Let me very quickly skim through some stuff like that. Back to 2018. This is actually more a useful diagram to look at, in that this is where we're at today, in that you've got servers talking to each other over HTTP, and then you've got clients with, say, an SDK with E2E in them, and a local cache which talk to the server over the CS API. Now, the next kind of extension to that might be that you could factor out the hard bits, like the end-to-end encryption, and the search, and the history, and that sort of thing, and put it into a daemon that runs in the background, and this could even be shared between multiple Matrix clients. Another extension, though, is that you could kind of take that daemon and hoist it up as a cross-platform SDK into your client. So all of your different clients could be sharing a blob, a library that provides some of the heavy lifting stuff, so you don't have to keep re-implementing end-to-end encryption. And then possibly this daemon could even sprout a full home server. You might even put the end-to-end encryption stuff in the server. So this is the kind of thing that you're running locally on your desktop in the background as a daemon, as a home server, still talking the same APIs to the client, but now it's using some kind of P2P transport to talk to other servers. And in some ways, the holy grail could be an embedded home server, where you then hoist this guy up into the client and have a reusable embedded home server widget. Client's still talking now natively CS API straight through to it, and you're talking straight through server-server API over P2P or CS API. And that diagram came together, I think, 2 years ago now, 2018, just to try to clarify some of the ideas which have been hanging around in this space. And the cool thing is that we've implemented Pantoliman now on the E2E side of things. Pantoliman is this guy. It is a daemon that runs on your client, and it offloads your own end-to-end encryption and your search history. We've also been rewriting Pantoliman from Python into Rust, and extracting the engine of that as, I think it's called Matrix NIORS at the moment. But the idea is basically to have it as a Rust SDK that can be embedded in other clients. Could be used, for instance, in iOS. Could be used in Fractal, in GTK Rustland. Could even be wrapped in JNI and used for Android, or even compiled to WASM and used on JS SDK. It's a bit of an experiment being done by Polyar, or Demir in real life, who wrote Pantoliman, wrote WeChat Matrix, and also wrote the Python Matrix and AI stack that is currently porting into Rust. But let's talk about the fun bit on the right-hand side of the peer-to-peer home servers. So if we go back to the current day, there have been a bunch of experiments here. There's one on Yggdrasil that's been done by Timothée Fleuret at EPFL, which is using Kayap as a transport and Yggdrasil as a overlay network. Yggdrasil takes the entire internet and builds a spanning tree. That's the root of the spanning tree over anybody participating in this overlay network. And it gives you an end-to-end encrypted overlay to talk to other people out there. It's got some interesting characteristics. For instance, the peering between the nodes is manually defined. So it could be explicitly discovering them via multicast DNS, or it could be a static route that you basically set up to link together these various different nodes. And then if this guy wants to talk to this guy, he either goes and traverses the routing of the tree to get to them, or having discovered them, he can then try to talk directly to them. And what Timothée did as I think a third-year project at EPFL was to write a widget that would convert your Matrix Federation traffic, proxy it into Yggdrasil, and then talk over Yggdrasil to other servers, and it worked. There's a screenshots of it apparently working. And so that was one thing that's been going on in the last year on peer-to-peer. Next one is Dendrite as the next-gen server, and what if we just made it talk libp2p over Go? So libp2p is a modular stack that IPFS uses, and it gives you a whole bunch of building blocks, implementations in lots of languages, and we basically have gone and chucked HTTP over libp2p connections. So the experiment went to make Dendrite Federation work again, make it work a bit more, so add on messages API, and then replace the normal net HTTP stuff with Go libp2p. Now we tried to do this demo, and Dave, are you in position to do a demo on this, or did your laptop run out of juice? What's the chances of this working? So we tried to do this before, and this one we do not expect to work because honestly we haven't changed it in any way. We haven't touched it. We've been working on the beta demo ever since. Let me go and try to do what I did in Brussels and see how badly it goes this time, which is to create an ad hoc network called Bucephalus. If anybody was crazy enough to hit the QR code, then you can try following along too. But did anybody try to follow along with the QR code? Brendan is cautiously raising his hand. Let me and Dave try to do it first before you try to do anything. But basically I've got an ad hoc network running now, and I've already got a dendrite. Oh, that's my broken synapse. There's a dendrite running in a window here. I've actually got a Postgres running up already. I'm going to set dendrite running here. And it's gone and found itself a public key here, and it's listening on some random IPv4 address, and hopefully, if I go and connect to it with a riot, it's found one room, it's advertised one room. This is as far as we got in Brussels. Oh, that's me heckling half shots. Deck. We've got an entrance P2P demo, we've got a riot. Okay, so here is my riot, which is in a room here called the Dave room. And if you look at the MX IDs and the aliases of this room, yeah, and I'm just zoomed in. There we go. You can see it's got a really, really ugly MX ID in that this is my IPFS public key, and you can see Dave in here, and we were successfully talking to one another a few minutes ago. How's it going on your side, Dave? Hey! So you see, this demo does actually work, and that we can have a conversation. Doesn't have typing notifications, unfortunately. Yay! Dave is in the Dave room. So this is what we were meant to be demoing at Potsdam, had it not gone horribly wrong, because it turns out that ad hoc Wi-Fi networks on a room with like 800 people or whatever it was, not so good. But this is actually showing proper dendrite federating, running client-side in a Docker container, at least, with Postgres, talking through to Dave on the other side. So this shit can work. This is the first time we've shown it working properly in real life, complete with reactions and everything. So this is as far as this is even further than we got in Brussels. Now the question is, what's been happening in the last month? So having in no way, in fact, let's just look at the diagram of what was going on there quickly, which is not the right slide. One sec. Diagram. Right, so this is where we were before. Right, talking through to Synapse, talking to Postgres, talking to, today it's just Synapse, going down back up to Riot, and what we just showed you with P2P was you have a dendrite running locally as a Unix daemon, talking Go libp2p via Postgres, over libp2p over the server API to another server on a different client, talking up through to Riot Web. So experiment 3 is what if we put dendrite in the browser? What if we compiled dendrite to WASM, implemented a Go HTTP transport backed by JS libp2p, implemented a Go SQL driver backed by SQL.js, which is SQLite compiled to WASM running in the browser, and then in step 4, we go and put it in the service worker, and we actually intercept the outbound CS traffic. And do you want to talk about this, Keegan?
It's still a work in progress. So hopefully this will load.
It might be rotated by 90 degrees. Oh, yeah.
Okay, cool. So what this is this is a dendrite which is being compiled to WASM, and it is running in a service worker in the browser, and you can send messages to yourself and no one else, because so this is the core concept. So if you look here, you can see in service worker internals. In fact, if I put something that's a bit more banana down here, I should be able to. I'm only using Chrome for the record because of service worker internals, which is very useful. I'm a very big Firefox fan myself, but unfortunately, this is very useful when you debug yourself. And then if I just replace this little banana, cool. So you can see here you've got an incoming CS API request. which is this is actually the this is not Go logs, but there should be something which is Go logs in a moment. Somewhere here we go. db.saw event. So you've got all this kind of mixture of JavaScript and Go log lines here. Basically, that banana got intercepted by the service worker and is being stored into a SQLite database. So instead of using Postgres, we are now using SQLite. And it's even more than that because we can't just use the standard SQLite one, which is matn/SQLite. However, we want to use SQL.js, which there is no suitable driver for that, so we had to write our own. So if I show you the architecture thing, there's three kind of areas that you can break this down into. The first is getting Dendrite to load it all in the browser, which is, first of all, well, you need it running the SQLite first. Once you've done that, you can register a service worker, which is here. This will go and just load in a bunch of Dendrite, effectively, and will register a database driver, a SQLite 3.js driver, which is, again, magic stuff which we all had to work on. If I can show you briefly the Dendrite WASM, I'll show you that afterwards, actually. For communication, we use Fetch, the interface, to talk to service workers. And that just basically does a function call straight through to the WASM code, which is then interpreted as an HTTP request, and that then passes through. I can show you a little bit about how that works in a moment to the main.go. And then the P2P communication is the final bit, which is where when we try to do federation in Dendrite, we, instead of going and doing normal HTTP, we go out and speak to libp2p first and go up to JS to do that. This is the bit that doesn't work yet, which is why the demo is you being alone all by yourself in a room. So here we've sprouted a new binary, which is Dendrite.js. You need to compile this with WASM and GoOS as JS. There's two key things here. You've got this local node here. This is once you've registered for a local node in your list and you've registered the network, you can go and effectively intercept. The interesting bit here is okay, this is just the P2P stuff. The interesting bit is the service worker fetch traffic. So this is what's going to be intercepting. So there's no actual HTTP requests being made here. They're all being just intercepted by this little Go function here. So you'll note there is no listen, serve, TLS or anything like that on 8008. It's just entirely replaced with these two functions there.
Magic.
Yeah, and it is lots of magic. And that's basically it. So most of the work has gone into getting Dendrite to work in SQLite at all, and then doing the side tests to make sure that we're pretty confident that it'll work in SQLite going forwards. And then it's getting the SQLite 3.js driver working, and then it's getting it to build with WASM and actually working in the service worker correctly, and then finally getting the libp2p stuff in there.
I play with it. I haven't had to play.
I mean, you can
this only started working like an hour ago, for the record. This is how fresh this is, and I want to see what's happening in the inspector, because surely that's going to be a lot more fun than the service worker logs. So you can see that we literally, well, can people see? Can people read this okay? Probably not on the internet, but in the room, hopefully we might have more of a hope of seeing that we literally have posts going through. This is E2E queries going through. And you can see Keegan's access token there. Please steal it and do horrible things with this ephemeral Dendrite, because obviously when he refreshes it will go away and be replaced by another one, because we don't persist the database at all so far. And so you can literally see these HTTP heads looking as if it's talking to port 8080, which is where actually Riot is working. But the magic of service workers is that it's intercepting that and just channeling it straight into Dendrite, which presumably gives a 404 because we just haven't implemented the keys query API in Dendrite yet. But there's one where it's actually working. So where's the sync? There's an incremental sync. So this guy here is actually a log line from Go itself. I think I'm right in saying?
Yeah.
And you can even see that it's giving us the, comically, it's giving us the Go line number and file that it's running in the depths of the JSON bit of matrix or user library in the guts of Go. So it's obviously being executed by the WASM exec wrapper, which allows you to put Go into the browser. But it's really happening. And if we go, well, can I refresh it? Will it explode?
If you refresh it, you'll obviously
I'll lose everything. Let's see how far back we can scroll, because Oh, yeah, this is looking good. Cool. So, where is the bit where it sets up the database? Because this
It
was.
won't be there because it's outside the scope of the tab.
You
need to unregister the service worker.
You sure? I believe you. Ish.
Scroll.
If I scroll enough, it will suddenly appear, right?
Nope.
Right? So this is the other weird thing about service workers. If you go and look in application and look at the service workers up here, you got this guy saying Dendrite SW is number 70 is activated and running, and these guys run completely separately from the life cycle of the tab, which is why I was asking what would happen if I refreshed, because the service workers should surely still keep going in the background. You haven't got updates on reload on.
Oh, that's a good
So
point.
I reckon I'm going to risk it and hit Control R or F5 or whatever, and hey presto, I'm straight back in. So that's the really cool thing. The
Because
Dendrite.
every time I've always unregistered the service worker because I want to refresh the code.
Yeah, precisely. But if you actually play it like a user rather than a developer, the Dendrite is still running in the background. So even though you refresh the entire thing, the server is still sticky and hanging around there in the background, which is ludicrously cool. Until you go and hit the unregister button or the stop button, at which point it's the end of the world. You can even literally go and focus on the tabs which are using it. In this instance, it's this tab, obviously. But can we get the logs from here? It'd be really obvious.
I mean, service worker internals is.
Yeah, but wouldn't it be nice to link you through to service worker internals to get at the logs? But basically, the logs, can I, if I will tab into things, am I going to see terrible things?
Probably not.
Well, have you got the service worker internal logs to hand? Because the thing that's so cool is setting up the schema.
If you want to see that, then let me just unregister it. It would work.
We have to log in again. We have to
Yeah.
type the passwords and everything.
Yeah, that's 1, 2, 3.
Okay. Not Hunter 42.
No, not of course.
Okay, so this is the bit I was looking for here, where you can literally see all the SQL flooding through, and it's not just going at, well, at the beginning, it goes and creates the entire schema, which is pretty cool in its own right, and that you can see that SQLite gets completely populated up. There's the room server database. In fact, it's got, what, 6 or 7 different databases, because Dendrite is split into microservices. In this instance, all the microservices are running side by side in WASM, but each one gets its own database. And right up at the beginning somewhere, it should create a whole bunch of schemas for the tables and the indexes and the databases somewhere. Where's it gone? That's all right stuff.
Oh, it's all
constantly
debug. That's fine.
It's what?
It's all debug.
Oh, you could just turn on the debug filter. There we go. So create table. Can we line wrap in here so we can actually see some of the fun bits?
Never remember the shortcut.
There we go. So there's going, creating a whole bunch of tables into there. And then you can see it inserting into the Kafka topics, Kafka being our NAF version of Kafka, which is in memory rather than
You got it.
a whole bunch of Java stuff. And these are the pernicious knits I was talking about earlier. Can you go back a sec? So one of the things which, down here, one of the things which Postgres gives you is native sequence support, so you can get the database to track any arbitrary auto-increment thing in an entity of its own right. SQLite doesn't have that, so you have to do it yourself. And this is an example of us going and building up one of these numeric IDs, one of these intern strings, to track the different topics in the NIDs and maintain that as a manual sequence, and so on and so forth. And there's something quite hard to describe about how magical it is to talk to an invisible home server. Is you're literally talking to port 8080 as if it's your local static web server for Riot, except literally out of nowhere, you get yourself a Dendrite, which is spewing SQL in your console like this. So this might be the future. It's almost working. I think it's probably another day before we get the libp2p bit of it working. The libp2p works in isolation. We've got a test rig that has it talking back and forth, a bit like the one that we showed a few minutes ago using the Go there.
I think it does work. I think it's Dendrite. I think it does work. I think it's Dendrite Federation, which does not work.
So either way, Dendrite lives, thanks to Keegan and Neil Alexander, who's also been frantically hacking away, has been implementing V2 rooms in Dendrite, which is the new state res that we implemented back in 2018 for Synapse, and we're frantically catching up now. But it's really fun to re-implement all of the new state res stuff, the merge resolution algorithm that Matrix uses, and this time document it even better than the first implementation in Synapse, and have different people implement it so that we improve the quality the implementations. And hopefully that will merge soon, and Dendrite and peer-to-peer is coming. Watch this space. Yay!